Welcome to the second web-based professional development session on quality teaching and learning. Our commitment is to provide a variety of professional development opportunities that are designed to offer the tools, resources, and links to teach with the student in mind. You will be asked to reflect on many questions as you go through the session. When you see the +L log image in the lower left corner, please click the pause button to reflect. Print, open, or save the QTL Tier 2 documents before you proceed. At the end of this session, click on the quiz link below the video to take a short quiz to check for understanding. Please take the quiz so your completion of this session will be recorded. In the Quality Teaching and Learning Tier 1 Professional Development session, you are presented with information on how students learn, including the concepts of brain research and core. Then you are presented with the teacher-centered versus learner-centered continuum, where different instructional strategies were discussed, including best practices. Finally, you had the opportunity to develop and strengthen your personal teaching philosophy. The main idea from QTL Tier 1 was that the use of learner-centered instruction is important because it forces students to become active participants in their education and demands that faculty work to engage their students. If needed, please refer back to the Quality Teaching and Learning Tier 1 session and any notes you may have kept from this session. Recall that a teaching philosophy is a self-reflective statement encompassing your values, beliefs, and attitude in regard to teaching and learning. You can think of your teaching philosophy as an internal compass that will guide you as you guide your students. You should periodically revisit and update your teaching philosophy as you grow as an instructor. This Tier 2 professional development session will focus on how to implement appropriate learner-centered instructional strategies into your course based on student learning outcomes and student needs, and explore the process of how we come to make purposeful decisions that will foster an engaging and rigorous learning environment. Remember that the TCLC continuum is the range of teacher-centered to learner-centered instruction in relation to beliefs about 4 elements. These 4 elements include who is responsible for learning, how knowledge is acquired, the type of assessment used, and the goal of instruction. Locate the learning log template you opened, printed, or saved at the beginning of the session. Throughout this professional development session, you will be presented with thought-provoking questions that require your response and reflection. Be sure to answer each question completely. Your learning log will then need to be submitted to your campus instructional effectiveness specialist at the end of this professional development session. The questions will encourage you to think about the process of how you go about making purposeful decisions in the classroom to foster an engaging and rigorous learning environment. It's important to keep track of how and why we as instructors come to make classroom decisions. A learning log can be used for a variety of purposes. Primarily, a learning log is used for learning documentation, reflection, and questions, but can also serve many other purposes. Let's begin with a few guiding questions. In your learning log, respond to each of the following guiding questions. As the session continues, you will be able to expand on your responses in substantive and meaningful ways. Click the pause button as you reflect. Click the play button to resume the session. Take a moment and work your way through this short true and false quiz. Think about each statement very carefully. Take the time to mull over each statement, as this activity serves as a self-analysis of your engagement of students in your class and of yourself as an instructor. Consider the current strategies used in your classroom. Are students being challenged? Do your strategies encourage student participation? Pause as you complete this activity. Let's take a deeper look into the scope and sequence of a course. As an instructor, why is it important that you have a working knowledge in the areas of scope and sequence? It is important because scope focuses on the base and boundaries of knowledge that will be explored in your course, and because student learning outcomes, or SLOs, can be considered to be a part of the scope for a course. Sequence refers to the chronological order in which a course falls within the program. Your focus in the areas of scope and sequence should help students reach their maximum learning potential. Understanding the base knowledge that students should have mastered coming into your course, and understanding where students need to be in terms of knowledge and skills to be prepared for the courses that follow, allows you to gauge an appropriate starting place and also guide you in preparing your students to be successful in your course and in subsequent courses that they will take. In your learning log, reflect on the importance of having a working knowledge in the areas of scope and sequence. What are the benefits of knowing the scope and sequence of your courses? What impact does scope and sequence have on students? Pause the presentation as you reflect. Let's take a closer look at the instructional decisions you make as an instructor and the impact these decisions have in the classroom. We will be discussing student participation, making informed instructional decisions, favorite lessons, lessons that did not go as planned, evidence for modifications, metacognition, and finally, student readiness. Motivating students to participate can sometimes be a challenge. There are many strategies available that, when used, can hold students accountable for participation. The more actively engaged in the class that students are, the more likely they are to be successful in learning. With this in mind, what instructional strategies can you use to solicit participation from your students? Do these strategies always produce desired results? Are there other strategies that could work better? Pause and add your responses to these questions in your learning log. In relation to the instructional strategies used in your classroom, why do you choose one instructional strategy over another? How do you know which strategy is best for a particular lesson session? What process do you follow in order to make decisions about instruction you will use in the classroom? What types of decisions are you required to make when lesson planning? Pause and add your responses. Of all the lessons you teach or have taught, think about the one that you consider to be your favorite. Why is this your favorite? What aspects of this lesson do you enjoy? What aspects of this lesson do your students enjoy? Pause, reflect, and add your responses to your learning log. Of all the lessons you teach or have taught, think about one that did not go as expected. Why didn't it go well? What factors may have contributed to this lesson not going as you expected? Pause, reflect, and add your responses to these questions to your learning log. After a lesson has been taught, it is fairly easy to get a sense of what went well and perhaps what did not go so well. It is much more of a challenge to find evidence to support either of the claims. Reflect back on the lessons you have identified as your favorite and the lesson that did not go as expected. How do you know that your lesson has gone well? What is your evidence, and how did you obtain this evidence? Likewise, how do you know that your lesson has not gone well? Again, what is your evidence? How did you obtain this evidence? Pause and add your responses to these questions to your learning log. Metacognition involves the analysis of one's own thinking processes. In other words, why do we do what we do? Metacognition is beneficial for students and instructors alike. It is critical to your development as an instructor as well as the instructional decisions made for your classroom. Through the use of metacognition, students can work to develop their ability to critically think and reflect. You are actually using metacognition when filling out your learning log. Pause this session and view the TED Talk video, How Thinking Works, presented by Dr. Derek Cabrera, listed below this session, or copy and paste the URL into a new browser. In your opinion, what is the correlation between metacognition and making instructional decisions in the classroom? How does it influence the decisions you make in the classroom? Metacognition is a useful strategy or skill to assist students in their development of critical thinking and reflection skills. How do we foster this ability within our students? How do you get your students to think? Add your responses to these questions to your learning log. We know that by strengthening students' metacognitive skills, they can begin to develop essential skills for learning. But how do we gauge if a student is properly prepared for your course material? How do you determine student readiness? There are several variables to consider when thinking about student readiness. Before discussing these variables, let's define student readiness. Student readiness refers to a student's ability to engage in the learning tasks that are required as part of your course. As an instructor, how do you gauge a student's readiness to engage in the learning tasks required for your course? You could make assumptions about student readiness based on the scope and sequence of your courses. However, these are just assumptions. There is no solid evidence to prove your assumptions are correct. In order to know where our students are in their propensity for learning, we must first ask. This can be done through the use of formative assessments, specifically through the use of pre-assessments. You participated in a pre-assessment model at the beginning of this professional development by completing the True-False quiz. While simple, a quiz such as the one you completed would give instructors some indication as to where students are in terms of prior knowledge. It would also allow instructors to make some judgments as to where they should place an emphasis on course material. Following the Bloom's taxonomy learning domains model, there are 3 types of learning domains, which include affective skills, cognitive skills, and psychomotor skills. While all 3 are critical to the facilitation of student learning, we will be focusing on the cognitive and affective domains. Equally important to the development of cognitive skills is the development of student affective abilities. Affective ability refers to a student's emotional and attitudinal development. An instructor should strive to ensure the emotional well-being of each student by creating a safe environment where students feel respected as individuals. Take a moment and reflect on the various ways in which you have created a safe learning environment for your students. Add your response to your learning log. Cognitive ability refers to students' mental abilities to construct meaning, think critically, and accomplish learning tasks. Cognitive skills can be strengthened through the use of learner-centered instructional strategies. Remember that with learner-centered instruction, students are engaged participants in their own learning, while the instructor is responsible for creating and facilitating quality learning experiences that maximize student learning. Through the use of learner-centered strategies, you can create valuable learning experiences for students that maximize participation, which allows students to become active participants in their learning. This document provides you with a variety of LCI instructional strategies that you can incorporate into your classroom. Refer back to the favorite lesson you identified earlier in this professional development session. With this in mind, answer the question prompts. What is the instructional strategy that you used? When is the strategy best used? Why is it used? How are your students engaged? How are your students accountable for their learning? Add your responses to these questions to your learning log. Thinking about your teaching philosophy and your role in curriculum assessment and creating an optimal learning environment, create a plan as to how you will implement the ideas and strategies learned in the Quality Teaching and Learning Tiers 1 and 2 sessions into your own classroom. Create a plan as to how you will implement the ideas and strategies learned in the Quality Teaching and Learning Tiers 1 and 2 sessions into your own classroom. Give at minimum 2 specific examples of how you plan to implement LCI strategies and ideas into your classroom. Please add these to your learning log. Revisit the guiding questions that were presented at the beginning of this professional development session. Reflect upon your overall growth and development as an instructor. Add your response to your learning log. If you have any questions regarding any information included in this professional development session, please contact the Effective Teaching and Learning Department at etl@baker.edu or speak with your direct supervisor. This concludes our session. Click on the quiz link below this video in Blackboard to take a short quiz to check for understanding. You only have to pass the quiz once, but you are more than welcome to review this session as many times as you would like. Please take the quiz so your completion of this session will be recorded.